All right, I'll call to order the November 10th, 2021 Public Works Committee. Can I get a roll call?
Chairman Waggy,
Here.
Alderman Gould,
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller,
Here.
Alderwoman Tice. Here. All members present.
Great. Agenda approval. Any changes to the agenda? Comments? If so, can we approve by acclamation? Great. Go on to citizen comments.
None at this time.
I go on to report of committee chair and alderman. Only thing I have is we had a ward meeting on Monday night, and one of the residents wanted me to thank Eric and Parks and Rec for the wonderful job of clearing Swib Club Lane. I think that's all the invasive honeysuckle that's been cleared out of there, and then along in the woods back there. So they were very appreciative, and they think it really has made that look fantastic, and I completely agree. So thank you very much for that, and our residents are noticing. Alderman Gould?
I'd agree with that. We also have had a ward meeting in the past couple of weeks, I guess. And one of the subjects that has come up increasingly in conversations with folks is that there's still the very big desire for skate park. So they've asked that we continue to keep that as it has been on the master plan top of mind. So I'm just bringing that up.
Thank you. Steve?
No report.
Nancy?
Following on the ward meeting theme, we had a ward meeting last night and had a thanks for the team that comes out to pick up all the limbs after the massive storms that we've had. And she lives on Whitehall, and it was next door to a huge tree that went down, and she was very appreciative of the city's efforts in that regard. So I want to pass that along.
Great. All right, nothing in the city administrator report. Move on to item 6, department reports. So Public Works is up.
Okay, just a few items that we have to cover here. Just gotta find my page. The Rosalie Avenue STP, we're more than 60% done. I know they did another pour today. It looks like they're targeting right before Thanksgiving, so around the 24th, they should be done with it. They'll still have some electrical work to do because Ameren hasn't responded yet to the request, but we're wanting, as soon as the lights are set, we want that energized, but we'll still have to wait for Ameren to run it from the pole that's over here to the east of the post office. The pavement improvements, I know they did pours today, Burn and Jones, poured over by Little Fishes. I know they did another little area by Ice Cream Specialties. The places that they repaired over by Metro Lighting, that's done, cured, and opened. And they're targeting also to finish up right before Thanksgiving. And then lastly, the KCI MoDOT project update. We'll start putting that with the city administrator's report. We meet every Monday as a group, so it's Navigate, it's the city, it's KCI, and go over schedule and anything like that. So originally they were going to take out that playground right around this week, but that's postponed indefinitely because there's a gas main in the way. Originally it was an Ameren line, which there still is an Ameren conflict, but parallel to the new deep sewer is a Spire gas line. So Spire has to relocate that before he can put in the sewer. And whenever we meet again next week, we'll see if it's any closer to November, December, or when they plan on doing it. But until the utility conflicts are done, we can't predict when they're going to do the sewer work. But whenever we do have a better schedule, then of course that'll be sent to the board and everyone will be notified within that work zone. So that's pretty much it.
Any questions or comments for Dan? I have one, and I know Dan and I have talked about that in Bola, but on Rosalie, and just for everybody on the board's awareness, really, residents have been reaching out and concerned about some failures of communication from Krupp basically to them of like, hey, your driveway's not going to be usable for a week, and so I think we've learned some lessons on that for future work, especially in Brentwood bound, of maybe ways we need to write into the RFPs that they will be communicating with the residents. And I actually think, Luth Brothers does a really good job. I mean, they tore up our whole street, and we knew exactly what was going on and, when our driveway would be available. So just awareness that, we need to be thinking about that for future contracts.
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff.
Actually, Dan, I do have a question related to that. So I think the original plan was the playground and location of the sewer line and everything was going to be done, try to be done before the holidays. Obviously, with this delay, that's likely not going to happen? Are people along Mary Avenue, that portion, are they going to be unable to park on that street?
As far as I
through-
know, everything is still status quo. You know, if you look at the schedule, if you open it up, it doesn't even have a bar anymore under November for any work. It doesn't even have December. So I think it's quite a ways in the
Spire
future.
was there digging today quite a bit.
Right.
Tearing up the street there. So are they, until Spire and Ameren verify that they're fine?
Right. There won't be any sewer work until the utilities confirm that they're
Okay.
abandoned and out of the way.
And are they keeping the, like, metal covers over the top of the area? Or are they backfilling and temporarily patching until?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
We don't inspect that sort of work. I don't know if planning inspects it either.
Okay,
Typically, there's a utility inspector that's with the company that inspects that, but
okay.
I knew they were going to start. I just didn't know that they had actually started. We can take a look at it.
Yeah, they did. They were tearing up the street pretty bad.
Yeah, I knew when they started Rosalie, it wasn't like they finished in 2 days or anything. I mean, it was weeks. And then they had to come back and then transfer service lines, and that took even longer.
Yeah, so to.
What are you asking that you want us to?
Just to make
do?
sure that the residents know how long that they're going to not be able to park in front of their home. I think they have started the work. If they're not going to be able to park there for several months, that might become an issue, especially with ice and snow and everything else coming.
Yeah, so basically you just want us to aspire how long Mary Avenue and the surrounding area is impacted and when they think they'll be completed.
That residents will be able to use that street again.
Okay.
Yep, thank you.
In a conversation I had with Dan, the city doesn't own, what do they call that? Signboard? What is it?
Oh, a message board.
Message board. I don't even think it's in the budget, right, for 2022.
No, we had talked
No.
about using ARPA funds.
ARPA funds.
Yeah.
So we're going to ask the contractors to make sure, especially for that area, because not everyone that lives in that immediate area uses that way to get onto Manchester, so that at least weeks in advance, they know about that. So Dan and I have been talking about that, but now that I have the email address for Chris Morgan, I think he's,
Yeah, Chris Morgan with
I'll
MoDOT.
send an email to him just so he's the head MoDOT person for this project. He's aware that the city would like for them to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dan? Thanks, Dan.
All right, thanks.
Move on to item B, Parks and Rec.
So I have a few items on my department report this month. The first is a holiday party. Staff has been working on the holiday party and trying to make sure that we are planning something that will be a socially distanced, safe event. We see people coming out more, obviously. People are trying, or anything else, tired of not being around other people. So we've seen people coming to board meetings, to Coffee with the Mayor. We've been running programs all year. So we feel like we'd be able to do it in a safe way. The biggest issue will be the line for food, and we might have to figure that part out and things like that. So again, we just wanted to kind of put that out there that we're working on that right now and hope to have a great party. Next is the Brentwood Chamber of Commerce. They voted at their board meeting last month to dissolve the chamber. Financially, it had been struggling, and COVID kind of put the final nail in the coffin, to be completely honest. It didn't help that the executive director resigned because she had to take another position with SSM. So the chamber's working with the Missouri Chamber Association, make sure that they do all the paperwork properly. And I know the chamber's also working with other area chambers who are still in operation to see what we can do for the chamber members. I think this is the third local chamber that's closed since COVID. So the Northwest, us, and I forgot the third one. But so it's unfortunate, but we'll see what we can do. Another is the aerator purchase. This is one of the things that the staff recommend buying this year as we reallocate some funds. I'll have to read this a little bit more closely because this came straight from my park superintendent. So we received some quotes, and the one that they're recommending is the Stinger Quad 3000. It is, the only one is completely driven, operated through use of hydraulics, so it really minimizes maintenance. There's no chain components, so you don't have to worry about chains or oils or things like that. And it also, we can maximize the speed using the hydraulics so that we can aerate and seed up to 2 acres per hour, which would be a good use. Now, because of the price, it is a patented system, so it's only one of it out there, so it would be a sole source. That's obviously over the $10,000 limit, so that would have to come from board approval. The other option would be to go a smaller model, and we'd have to kind of work out or go do a bid with a different model, but staff is really recommending this one for the use of, or for the maintenance aspects of it. So if you guys are in agreement, we would take this to the board, I think, on Monday.
So do you need a motion on the aerator?
I'll make a motion that that we authorize the expenditure of $12,370.50 for an aerator per the recommendation of this memo.
Second.
Yeah, Jeff?
What kind of cost differences do you expect to see from one that's not hydraulically driven and all that stuff? I mean,
I think they're still over 10,000, so if it's, I mean, even the chain ones, we'd have to, it'd have to be a sealed bid. But we'd have a comparator if we did something that's chain driven. The benefit, what staff sees, what my park superintendent sees, is the savings in time and maintenance over the life of the piece of equipment.
and this is something that's going to be used at all of the parks and,
Yeah, it's a piece of equipment we identified specifically for Brentwood
Bound.
Bound, but obviously once we have it, we'll use it everywhere. It'll be a huge benefit not only to the fields in the Brentwood Sports Complex, I just remember to start saying that, but also all of the other turf areas throughout the park system.
great, thanks.
Eric, will you be able to have that in-house this year to do work before winter, or is it too late?
We can if we get it approved at the board meeting, yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments? All right, can we just do a voice vote on this? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nay? Okay.
Okay, the last is the Norm-West naming options. And so when we talked about changing the name of the park to Brentwood Park, we mentioned how the Brentwood Bound Task Force talked about how to honor Norm West and the legacy that he gave to the city of Brentwood, and I think that was echoed by the board. So what we've done is put together some options of some things that a lot of pieces we could go, and they range from everything. This is just alphabetical. The amphitheater, which obviously we can name that after them. The Destination Play Space Family Pavilion, the main hub pavilion. That would not be our first recommendation, obviously, because we hope to utilize those things as naming rights for other organizations. There's a number of miscellaneous items in the play space area, like the spine, musical area, the quiet area, the tunnel. You could always do something like that. There's the event lawn pavilion. Again, and that's the main pavilion. We think we can get sponsorship naming rights for that, so that would not be a recommendation. Another item is interpretive signage. That was one thing that was brought up, is maybe we just do something as a nice interpretive sign. We're also considering how we do the history of the dinky, the trolley, as well as the, I think I wrote it down so I couldn't forget, the quarry, thank you. And so, we could obviously do something like that with Norm West. And obviously there's those couple meditation areas. So the question is, does the Public Works have, or does the committee, do you guys have a strong opinion on one of those? Another option is we could take this back to the Brentwood Bound Task Force and kind of run it through them, have them make a recommendation to bring up back to the Public Works Committee.
Yes, Steve?
Is the new road that's going to come off Brentwood, is that going to be just a continuation of Brazeau?
I believe it is, I know.
That's going to,
That's what it looks like in our renderings, yes.
so we wouldn't want to consider naming that section, maybe Northwest Drive or whatever.
It's an idea.
I think if we
We can explore it.
yeah, I mean, that's one I didn't think of. Now, if we explore that option, I think we might hear from Mr. Johnson, who's talked to us about
That was
keeping
gonna be
it.
my next comment.
Yeah, I
Do you
forgot.
remember what Andy Johnson was suggesting?
I think it was suburban tracks.
That's what it was, to honor what was there.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of maybe getting the task force. I know Stu and a few others have some opinions about that and have a desire to honor that name. I mean, all right, I think, is there reason the amphitheater, is that an inclusive of the sort of lake? Or would the lake and amphitheater area be, what's your thought on that?
I mean, ultimately, as I'm going to be setting up a meeting with BOLA here and hopefully next week or two about our sponsorship routes and things like that.
Okay.
I see the lake as a possible naming rights opportunity. So it could be Northwest Amphitheater at whatever lake.
Whatever lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
so-
mean, and is there a rush to this, for this type of a decision?
No, I
or-
mean, it's been something we've been kicking around for a while, and I know that it came up
I
why we wanted to
also
bring it in.
heard from Larry West. So, and I think I can read his email. He's excited about the city's project. The new park is going to be a wonderful addition to the city of Brentwood, he says. And at what point in our discussion, I believe the park was going to keep the name of my father. I hope that's the case. But if not, I would like to have the existing signs. So I thought I'd hold off until the board,
Oh, understood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we need a bigger picture of, to your point, the areas that we feel could be potential sponsorship opportunities. And then I'd recommend that the task force kind of reviews the opportunities for Norm West and brings something to us.
Great. We can easily, once Bull and I meet, we could, in a weekly, or one of my weekly reports, talk about the sponsorship stuff, and then bring that to the next Public Works meeting. Hopefully, we might be able to get into a couple meetings before December is my hope. So if we're able to do that, then maybe we can kind of bypass or do it through the weekly report route. And then as far as, we can bring that definitely bring it to the task force.
I mean, my personal thought is that it should be more than just interpretive signage. Something a little bit more, noticeable and bigger presence. So I like the ones that, and I personally would probably stay away from the destination play zone, and so I lean more to the amphitheater but, we'll let the task force
So it
discuss.
sounded like a motion to take it to the citizen task force.
That was my motion, yes, thank you.
Wait a minute, I'll second the motion. I have a, may I have
Yeah,
a,
please.
so, I definitely think we should do something to honor the legacy and what Norm West did with the park. But the family was also paid for the land. So, we also need to remember that, we did pay them recently to take the land. So, they have a long history of the park with the city, but there was payment, so I think that should be taken into consideration as we think about what we're going to name and the naming rights that you have the opportunity to maybe solicit more money from with your work.
All right, any other comments? All right, all those in favor of the motion to take it to the citizen task force, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great.
Thank you so much.
All right, move on to planning and development.
We were gonna, this past week, there was MSD was issued a permit to do sewer work along Rosalie and White. We were notified that some trees were marked to be removed. That was not part of that permit. That was occurred on Wednesday. I spoke to the project manager with Luth, and they indicated that the tree services wouldn't be out for another few weeks until we cleared up the issue of the removal of what trees. On Friday, without Luth's knowledge or the city's knowledge, the tree service company went out and started removing one of the trees. When we found out, I called Luth, and they had them pack up and leave. However, they did complete the removal of a century tree, the 40-inch oak. So we have contacted, Dan was able to contact the right-of-way manager with MSD. There is an agreement in place regarding the trees with the city, so we will be following up with a meeting with them on proper compensation or future action and whether additional trees can be saved. Luth has indicated that they will not have the tree service out there until we've gotten this cleared up, so.
Okay, anybody want to start, or I will? I mean, so I guess my concerns are, number one, are there other trees that are coming down on, because there's Bridgeport, there's Rosalie, there's, White, there's a lot of MSD work that's happening in the future, and do we have any concerns of other surprise tree takedowns? And so I don't know if that's something we can talk to them about to understand. And then I'm not sure that there's anything we can do about White. If they have a design in place, it's not Luth Brothers that can change. They bid on a completed design, so they're not going to be able to change that. But I'm not sure what options we have of changing that design at this point. I'm not sure why we needed to lose these trees. They didn't have to cut down any trees when they did it on other streets.
Well, Luth had the tree service out there, and they felt that the work was going to severely damage the root system of those trees that were marked, and that's why they were marked to be removed, that the damage would create a hazard in the future, and that they indicated that there would be no way to avoid that with the work that they were doing. I don't know if it could have been foreseen to ask them to move the sections. That's certainly something Dan and I can follow up with MSD on when we talk to them. But that was loose reasoning for having the trees assessed and marked of whether they can be saved or not, or whether the work would damage them too severely.
Yeah, I wonder if moving the line into more of the middle of the street, I know that presents a concern of closing the entire street as opposed to one half, but I think if there's a possibility, we should explore that option and see if there's anything we can do to keep those. I mean, as it states in the report, it takes 52% of the canopy out of that street. It's a lot. Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, I share the same concern. It makes me sick that we've lost, especially out of that whole list, the one century oak. That's just it's just depressing. Is there anything that the city can look at, or have we done similar to how we've done surveys of plots of lands and where we might have right away? Have we done surveys of century-old trees, knowing that we're kind of a tree city, right? Is there a way that we can do a survey so that when people come and utility companies come in to do work, we have those already identified so they don't just run them and then without knowledge of what those, the impact of those trees?
Yeah, it's hard to determine the exact age of trees, obviously, without cutting them down and then counting the rings, but a good indication is size, and our arborist has a good indication of which ones are nicer, larger trees, and that's why we tab them as the gold medal trees, because those are the oldest and largest DBH, the largest trees we have. My biggest concern of this is, we could ask them to replace one for one, but we're going to lose 114 inches of tree canopy and only get back 27. And so do we look at a policy or ordinance that says if utilities are come through, we'll ask for the same amount of canopy replacement. So that would be, in this case, 44 new trees. And then we start hitting some of our vacant sites that we have and being able to kind of replace. Even that, at least the overall city canopy will remain the same, although you never get back an oak like that. So it's something for consideration. That's something, I would recommend. We talked about that a year or two ago, primarily on private property, because, a similar policy, and at the time, the committee didn't want to work on or made it felt like saying what to do on private property wasn't proper, but this is public right of way, so that might be another course we can try.
Yeah, I definitely think public right-of-way or even having some way to recognize these trees as gold medal trees, just to raise that awareness of even the residents that live around there to know to take care of them or want to take care of them. So I'd look forward to anything that might come forward recommendation-wise.
So what do we need? Do we need a policy that would put the contractors on notice that if they're doing anything in the right-of-way, that they contact the city first, and then we send either Davy Tree or the arborist to go out and evaluate, is this work going to disturb the root base, or can the tree be saved, or what?
Yeah,
do we
I
need
think
to do?
the biggest concern is while we have a, I guess, agreement with MSD, I'm not sure exactly if it's 1-for-1 or tree canopy, diameter inch per diameter inch. And so I think if we want to create an ordinance specifically for trees in the right of way, and then we'll try to replace those if any construction work's done, because there's times where contractors take out right of way trees for homes because they want to move their driveway or something like that. And so maybe we can kind of beef up the ordinances for public right-of-way trees. And yet you're correct. I think the urban forester would have to be involved and make sure as plans come in, we get them review. If we see the to be removed sign, they should let us know how many trees they're expecting to remove and increase that communication. And as Whitney said, in this case, there were none marked for to be removal. And so it wasn't until the urban forester saw them marked that we even started to ask some questions.
I would certainly support any proposal you would bring back about replacing, inch for inch, or I didn't not get the right lingo, but inch for inch, the diameter of the canopy of the trees that are taken out by utility workers and what they need to replace.
I'm sure I can have something ready
yeah.
for next month's committee meeting.
I mean, they obviously can't replace this, but it's just keep our trees.
So I think that's good for long-term, but, in the immediate, right now, we have White Avenue, which is, one's down and 8 others are possibly coming down. And then, what can we do to verify that there's no other path, even if the city has to possibly pay for that or something to retain those in some way, to make sure that we have totally vetted all options to save those. And then, if what we can't save, including the one that's already down, how will we be compensated near term, even before that ordinance comes online, right? Should we just go ahead and ask them? I mean, they're kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
so.
that's the meeting that Dan's trying to set up for Whitney, Dan, myself, and MSD, so we can have those conversations. I would agree. I think anytime that we see plans to come through and remove trees, I think it's the city should have a conversation with the utility of, can you move them? What can we do to protect them? Get their urban forester involved in those conversations right from the beginning. And we can definitely start doing that. I'm sure, I can work with Dan on those type of meetings. But this one that hopefully, I think we're talking next week, Dan, for this meeting. Yeah. So I think, we'll have the conversation is, hey, we've lost this tree. The city as a whole doesn't enjoy losing trees. So is there anything we can do? And here's how we'd like to be compensated for it.
Yeah, I think we should be very aggressive in that conversation, even if it's replacing the whole caliper, even without an ordinance online, we should ask for 15 trees to replace the one that they've already knocked down. And, and if we can't find a path forward, do that for all of them. I mean, we kind of have them. And then how do we absolutely verify that no others are coming down? So we're not, 3 weeks from now, getting in the same loop on Rosalie or something, that they're going to be working all over the place in Brentwood. So is that just a conversation with them to make sure?
Yeah, in my mind, and again, I think this part with Dan and Whitney is making sure that they understand moving forward that anytime we see plans come in, especially with tree removals, that will institute another meeting with MSD, with the Parks and Recreation Department and Planning and Public Works to look at the plans, verify what we can do, what we can't do. Again, It's one thing for smaller trees, if they just got planted a year or two ago, we might be a little bit more receptive to that. But you think about, we planted, 2 of those trees that are coming out are trees we've planted within the past 2 years. So if we knew that was coming down, we could have held off on those and planted those other places. So it'd be nice to kind of know that as well.
And maybe they could relocate those for us, because you've got 2 years of growth on them, independent of just the cost of them.
Yeah,
Maybe that's not worth it.
we can talk about that. It's a lot easier to transplant younger trees than it is older trees, obviously.
And then just for the board, hopefully everybody's aware of the Tree Keeper software. I personally love this, but it's right off of brentwoodmo.org. It's updated by the arborist and Davy Tree. So, you can see all the city-owned trees and the diameters, and you can search, and, it's a pretty cool way of seeing all the stuff. So, and I guess final question is, ultimately, they still have to get us a permit to do this work on White. If we're not satisfied that they haven't done everything they can to try and save these trees, what happens if we don't give them the permit?
That's a question for Whitney.
And I asked
just
this
sat down.
earlier in a pre-meeting, but, I want to ask it out in public. I mean, can they eminent domain us?
There was a water line replacement that was scheduled on High School Drive probably a couple years ago that we had some problems with, and they just pulled out. We're not going to replace your water main then. So I guess that would be the avenue that MSD would take. I can't say for certain.
Actually, that happened, and maybe was it Madge? Remember they had a project on Madge?
Oh, I
that-
remember. It took about a year.
That
Yeah.
caused a lot of consternation with people, but there was another street where they were
It was
attempting
after-
to,
Yes, it was after the Madge project, and
Okay.
they kind of just swept in by surprise and started drilling holes in High School Drive. And that was during the time when we were making them put that coating back on all of Madge Avenue, we left it that you're gonna have to do that in a high school too, because all these streets were just recently repaved, and now you're gonna basically
that's the
cut a
trade-off.
strip out of the middle of them all the way down,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, my point is that we have some leverage here, I think, as a town, to make sure that they are honestly doing everything they can to try and save these trees, and just, instead of just saying, oh, it's gonna be really hard, and we already got this design, and sorry. I would encourage us to really fight back on this. Okay. All right, I think that's it. And then on the item D, sustainability. I don't think we have anything there, right, Eric? Nothing. Okay. Move on to old business, 7A. All right, the outsourcing of the commercial inspections, continued discussion. And I think this was, I went to the Ways and Means where we were talking the public works and planning and development aspects of the budget. And so there is an additional head in there, and I think that was a good trigger point that we should have a conversation here and continue that conversation, because, if you read the budget narrative, they're getting overrun by the amount of work, and I think we need to keep having this conversation to find a way forward.
Oh, so who's the presenter? Well, I thought we had a pre-meeting with Alderman Weggie, and in the budget, the 2022 recommended budget, we are requesting 2 positions. One's a fire marshal, the other is a multidisciplinary inspector. And so I asked Chief Cottrell to come and help you understand why we're requesting a fire marshal, and then we'll just transition into why the inspector.
Sounds like a good plan.
Hey, good evening. Did a lot of research in the last several hours, so I will try and narrow my focus here. For clarification for the chair, I did research what St. Louis County currently offers for fire protection districts in St. Louis County. What I came up with was 4 fire protection districts where they provide full service for. And in each of those districts, the district still has a representative work with St. Louis County for the life safety aspect. So the fire district still has to adopt the life safety code because St. Louis County has exempted it from their codes. So St. Louis County does not have a life safety code. So those districts work with the county inspectors to enforce their local code. So I just wanted to provide that clarification. To note on those, they include areas, so I'm not specific to municipalities, but Afton, Spanish Lake, Riverview, Moline Acres. So communities vastly different than Brentwood. They don't have the high-rise, they don't have the multi-story hotels and large shopping districts. So that's a big concern to me. Under St. Louis County, what they currently offer are fire suppression inspections, and I just want to be clear what a fire suppression inspection is. That's a hood system over cooking appliances or paint booths. So it's just a evacuation area. They can be very detailed and extensive, don't get me wrong, but that's all they address from a fire perspective. The rest comes back to Brentwood, to local code, local authority having jurisdiction. We're still responsible for our Knox box placement, our fire department connection placement, new fire hydrant placement. So having local fire marshal tied to the city and our department, very advantageous. We're behind that. That's the highlight that I wanted to provide. Differences in the codes, if we regress to St. Louis County 2015 code from where we are today under the 2018. Number one on my list, mobile food trucks. They're not even addressed in the 2015. They are in the 2018. In the design of the new Brentwood Park, we have mobile food trucks coming in a regular basis. So that is addressable. Many changes to sprinkler inspections, buildings that are under construction and or demolition. So in the fire service, this has been a hot topic across the country. New buildings under construction that are burning. That is addressed. Additional measures that contractors have to have in place. That's a very important piece to the 2018 code that is not included in 2015. That's kind of the high level on going to St. Louis County for fire inspections. We are a busy commercial district, so approximately 700 annual fire inspections need to occur each year. So as I stated at Ways and Means, our staff runs 59% of their calls from 8 in the morning to 5 in the evening. So, and that's when we do our training hours. So the uninterrupted availability to go do the fire inspections is just that's just a solid way to complete those inspections. That's the highlight I would like to discuss. Do you have any specific questions for me?
Chief, can you kind of explain the difference between a fire inspector and just the multidisciplinary inspector that we would have in planning development?
Yes, sir.
Just to kind of give the board context on that.
Absolutely. So the fire inspection is looking specifically at the life safety issues, the sprinkler systems, the fire alarm system, the exits, what other protection measures are in place, extinguishers, hood systems, our access, building access. We have fortunately worked very well with the building department on having adequate access to our buildings in Brentwood. We have some that frankly make me very nervous because in the development stage, access was not taken into consideration. In the last 10 years, we've done a pretty good job with access. If you notice at the Drury Hotels and Town Place Suites, we have very good access because we worked with them. So just a continual communication with our businesses under development and existing. That's the big difference as far as electrical, plumbing, mechanical, that the multidisciplinary inspector does handle.
So it's almost like a separate skill set. It's
Yes,
a
sir.
separate experience base. So,
Yes, sir.
we couldn't have somebody doing halftime, multidisciplinary plumbing and then,
Right.
fire marshal halftime after that.
And even the plan review, that's a gap that's not happening on a consistent basis today. Looking at the plans when they're submitted for a permit from a fire operations perspective. Yes.
Yeah, Nancy.
So I have a question about the, how you're doing the annual inspections now, and if you anticipate any savings in overtime because you have a new person doing inspections and
Yes. So
utilization of the current staff.
yes, we were authorized this year in the month of June to pay overtime up to 8 hours per week to have our staff go out and start performing these inspections uninterrupted. We've made some decent progress. We don't fulfill those 8 hours every week. To date, we've spent 160 hours. I have it in my memo. So yes, there will be savings from that overtime.
Is that reflected in the budget, or is the
Yes.
84,000 that's in there, is that just 6,000 less because you had to get behind 6,000 somewhere?
Yes.
It's 6,000 less. So
And
That's what
I
I look like,
actually
but I-
will recommend that those two overtime budgets be restored from the ARPA funds. We had to balance the budget. And, within each one of those budgets, they're also making additional requests. So unless the board wants to dip into fund balance, there was no way that I could say I'm presenting to you a balanced budget. And so that's what the fire chief was able to give, maybe reluctantly, but he's part of the team. And that's what the police chief was able to give. In addition, when he presents, they had to give their education. I think you asked the question, the education benefit as well. It just depends on what the additional new request each department has. But it's been 90,000 for many years, so I'm hoping that it can be restored to the 90,000 once you all have a chance to look at the ARPA request.
Well, my question is, does it need to be how much of that 90,000 or whatever's been spent so far this year has been going to annual fire inspections? And is there a way to lower the, this is maybe more of a Ways and Means question, but
Sure,
is there a way to
understood.
lower the amount going to overtime? Because we're hiring, potentially hiring someone to do some of the work that was being done during overtime.
for sure. So this year specific, 2021, we knew the COVID vaccination clinics that our staff worked in was going to be reimbursed by FEMA. We took that into account for this inspection trial period, frankly. We're trying to get caught up before ISO comes in next year and looks at our records. We've made significant improvement in the ISO category for fire marshal services because we've updated our codes. We lost points last assessment because our codes were so far dated. So having that, I don't want to lose those ISO points. But to answer your question, yes, we will save money by not paying that out for the inspections. It's a very slippery slope because we've had years where we've had injuries that affected every shift, and overtime is quite high for a small department that we can't pull somebody from another station to fill in. So it's overtime.
Thank you.
Yeah, Steve?
I know there's been a concern going back to Terry, your predecessor, because I remember him talking about, during the battalion chief talks, that we needed somebody to be looking at plans on a constant basis and going around and inspecting some of these buildings.
Yes.
So I guess what are we discussing the hiring of the position, or what are,
Well,
what's
I
our,
think-
what's our concern that it's here tonight?
I think it started in the planning and development and the fact that there were 2 additional inspectors coming on in the new budget to get a little more detail. I view the fire marshal as severable from the
Oh,
multidisciplinary
yeah.
inspector.
Big
But I
time.
do think it's worth digging on, can you share that responsibility? That was my lines of questioning in the pre-meeting that I wanted to bring out.
I don't, there are 2 different animals here when it comes to these type of inspections. I remember, belonged to a church in Clayton, and Clayton comes out twice, or every other year, with their whole staff to learn, especially with new guys, how the building's laid out and where the dangerous areas in case of a fire, how to handle it. And they do the fire suppression and make sure our fire extinguishers are up to date and all that. So, I mean, if we're not doing that, that's a big concern.
Yeah, and we have been behind, but like I said, we've made some significant strides. We found very concerning occupancy in Hanley Industrial Court. They disabled their fire alarm system and their sprinkler system in 2019. So that affects every employee that walks into that facility that they're in charge of.
Well, it
So
affects our guys that go in the fight that fire.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, and I had similar questions during Ways and Means, but it sounds like the fire marshal, again, is severable and necessary no matter what we make any decisions as far as code compliance and everything. My question is, as it relates to the fire inspections being our responsibility, can we have those under certain codes, even if a portion of our other building codes are in a different code?
I think that's a great question. I might not be able to fully answer. I know the codes are designed to coincide and reference back and forth. So a 2018 edition International Building Code references 2018 edition International Fire Code. Going for one of them being 2015 and another being 2018, I don't know that I can give you a qualifying answer to that. I don't know if Steve can.
Because it seems that the
'Cause we've talked
conversation
about that,
the
yes.
conversation we've had is whether or not certain parts of our department get outsourced, meaning like commercial or something like that, but we still retain certain like residential control. My question is that, does that mean that across the board, anything that we still retain, does it have to come down to 2015? Or do we, the pieces that we still retain, maintain the 2018 code?
The codes are meant to work together, as the chief and Steve can attest to this. They cross-reference. So the residential code will say C building code or C building 2018 building plumbing. They don't work separately. In addition, with going back, if you're more than 2 years off the cycle of the latest building code,
Two cycles.
2 cycles, that affects the city's fire insurance rating as well as the city's flood insurance rating. So currently, we've heard that those cities that are on the 2015 are already starting the process to update to the 2021.
Right.
Nobody really separates residential one code year to commercial another code year, because the design of the building, residential code, is meant to work together with the, as a one package kind of entity, because they're all updated together. So Steve, do you want to?
Just for, I guess, for an example, it gets in pretty quick with the cross-referencing, because the Chapter 1, Section 101 already is referencing the building code. As you get a little deeper in Chapter 3, which is design, it's all over in there, because pretty much anything that is structural, that is not covered by the residential code, falls to the building code, along with all the ASTM and the ANSI stuff, all the engineering books. I only went through the first 5 chapters. Every chapter has a reference to one of the, I guess for the for the ease of keeping them separate, one of the commercial codes. The residential code is 1 and 2 family dwellings. The building code is pretty much everything else. It's about the same size book. I think there's like 44, 45 chapters in here.
And I will also add, St. Louis County did not adopt the energy code of the 2015. They kept it at 2009. So solar panels, the energy conservation of any commercial buildings they would only review what they adopt, not what if the city wanted energy conservation, we'd still have to review that. So that's another concern, is where do we want, at what does the city want to have the county review versus the city to continue to review? We don't know yet if they're even going to adopt it as part of the 2021. So they will have their process. They did not adopt whole sections of the code, which is what we find also a concern. So
The county does have a lot of amendments to every code that they adopt. I mean, they make a lot of changes to it, which we would have to follow with if they're gonna take the commercial side.
So, but to my point, though, you can make an amendment of adopting one code with, even though the books are set up to, obviously, I understand why you would want to have the book set up to cross-reference the current book, but you can amend portions of the code that we would take on.
Yeah,
Meaning that
they're
to
all
the chief,
adopted separately. They're not, in the adoption ordinance, the residential code is adopted with amendments, then the building code, it doesn't matter what order, but then mechanical code is adopted, plumbing code is adopted. So each one of these is adopted as a separate entity. I just honestly have never heard of a municipality taking different cycles of the code.
okay, thank you.
So I think just the process check here, I mean, I think we're done with chief, right? So, because the other aspect was the additional head inspector on planning and development.
Chief might be, if we've got, even if you could have one code for commercial and one code for residential, then that affects our ISO, right?
And I'm not sure how ISO would look at that if we have some parts of the code as 15 and some as 18, if how they would look at that. Are they saying you're in 15 or?
I think the assistant chief has.
They're just going to look at our year. So they will see 2015. So we will be beyond the 6 years. That's 2 cycles. And so that would be a potential deduction for us in that category.
All right, any other questions for the chief, and then we can move into the additional head requested in the budget for another inspector.
Is there, if I may interject, since you were at Ways and Means, is it your intention to come back to Ways and Means and share, your position? Because I think there's somewhat of a pause on the request for the 2 positions. So as you deliberate here, is there any information you want to take back to Ways and Means, or will you be attending that meeting to share that? On behalf of this committee, I presume.
I don't know. I mean, do you want the committee to form a position and vote on a position to take forward the Ways and Means?
Not necessarily. It was never my intent, but when you showed up at the meeting, it went that way. So,
I was very quiet. I didn't even talk.
No, we couldn't miss you. You were there. Whatever you want to do, I'm just throwing my 2 cents in.
Well, how about this? I mean, does anybody have an issue with adding a full-time civilian fire marshal as part of the budget at this point, based on the questions and everything here, because I don't know. So,
Right, that's what Prop P is for.
yeah, so,
That's true.
so I think the unanimous recommendation from this is to add the fire marshal.
Okay.
So we got that one done. Thanks for your time. Okay, so then let's move on to the additional head request for another inspector. And I guess the thing that really stuck out to me was in the narrative at the beginning, we were looking at the number of inspections and that, everything is going on, right? So it showed there were approximately 3,000 inspections through the first 9 months of this year. If you extrapolate that out, that's 4,000 inspections this year. Last year, it was 2,000. The year before, it was 1,000. So we're doubling every year. And so, the questions I have is, we have the county thing going on, but is one head even enough, right? Are we going to be looking at 8,000 next year inspections that we have to do? If this keeps going the way it is, I feel like we are and I go back to the same thing I say in every one of these meetings. I am not sure that we are servicing our residents and our commercial development because I feel like we just cannot keep up with the volume of work. And I am deathly afraid that we are going to constrain Brentwood-bound development because we can't handle it internally. So that was my concern, and I was surprised to see one additional head in there. I know we've had a lot of hiring challenges to bring people on, and it just seemed like a Band-Aid, and I was kind of surprised to see it, honestly.
We do have an update.
Okay.
We have accepted the person that we have made an offer to replace Steve as the chief building official has officially accepted as of yesterday afternoon at 4
Fantastic. That's
o'clock.
great news.
We still have background checks and all of that to go through, but we do have that on board.
Good.
We also have accepted the offer was accepted for our permit tech. So once we get that full-time person in, that would also help. I did want to point out that of the 3,000, Steve just provided updated numbers to date from January 1 to November 8th, and there were 3,298 inspections. I would say that when I did the calculation, 15% of that was just the commercial. Of the permits received, only 10% of the permits received was residential. So as I pointed out at the Ways and Means Committee, we are seeing almost a 75% increase in all of our permits and inspections from the previous year. So commercial is a small portion of that. On larger projects, we have talked with developments, potential developments, that we would ask that they farm out or contract out with ICC to do the permit review for a larger building, because we just don't have the time to sit down for hours on end, 10, 15 hours, to go through those kind of big documents. They have indicated they can turn them around faster. I think with Town Place, the Marriott, they turned it around fast. Once we got that into agreement, they turned it around faster and was much more thorough than what I've heard the county can provide. So that's why we were thinking of that, looking at continuing that option. I think once we have a chief building official full-time that can help with the permit review, and we have a second permit person helping with the permit review, that will relieve some of the weight of our current senior inspector, because he's doing the majority of the permit review when he's not doing the inspection. So he was hired on June 28th, and from June 28th to October 1st, he had already put in 160 hours of overtime. So I don't want him to have a heart attack.
No, we shouldn't be doing that to any of our employees.
Yeah, like he's very nice and offers, but he's trying, he said to Steve today, actually, that he had gotten the turnaround review down to 6 days. Now, the problem some people are complaining about is, yes, you're turning the comments around in 6 days, but when we resubmit, which could be a few weeks later, we're back in the cycle for 6 to 10 days for another review. So having a second senior person that can take on the building inspections as well as the plan reviewer would help speed that up and provide a quicker turnaround. ultimately, yeah.
So in terms of, so we have an offer out and accepted on the building official and an offer out for the planning permit technician. So we're still down one head in the department, right? Even to the 6 full-time heads that we have in the budget for this year.
So yes, so for the 2021, the code enforcement officer was budgeted at a full-time position. Now, he's only part-time. So that's in the 2022 budget. I moved that to part-time, so we would have still have 6 full-time. He would show up as a part-time employee instead of 6 full-time employees. So that's where that difference is coming in. So yeah, the code enforcement officer is really likes just working them Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays, part-time for us right now, so.
Okay, but we're still looking to hire one multidisciplinary inspector to fill the 6 full-time heads. that we
No,
have.
No, that's an
that
additional.
includes, that is included, yeah. So as 2022, we are looking for the senior to fill in that 6 full-time positions with the code enforcement moved to the part-time category.
Okay.
Just to back up for just a minute on the numbers of inspections, I don't think the last 2 years, we fully implemented MyGov, and we're doing everything through MyGov. Inspections weren't easy to track before that. They're simple to track with MyGov, and it'll break down percentages for you too. And with that being said, I don't foresee, boy, if we're busier than we were this year, it's going to be, although, I mean, you can see it in the future with Brentwood Bound, if, that's going to be, there'll be a lot of commercial work down there. But as far as the numbers, I can't see it doubling. I just don't think that there's that many opportunities to double all of those. That we had the hotel, we had a guy at the hotel almost every day. So there was a lot of inspectors there. We don't get that many buildings that size either. But
Maybe one every couple of years. I mean, there's a potential for, is it 8-story? 7-story development project coming on board. But once that's finalized, I think Whitney's had a conversation with them that they would go the.
They wouldn't be ready for construction for 2 years anyway. By that time, if the county goes to the 2021 and the city wants to review going to county with the 2021, we could look at it that again. It's just going back and then going forward, I think would create a lot of confusion as well. But yeah, they indicated they wouldn't even be able to start construction until 2 years.
probably within 2 years, the 2024 code would be out.
Yeah,
So they're usually about a year ahead of the date that the code is ready for adoption if you want to do that.
and the county never adopts the latest, they always adopt the previous version, so they would, when the 2024 comes out, they would adopt the 2021, yeah.
Oh, I have a question, but I gotta. Am I the only one with a question? Well,
You halfway gestured. It was
well,
like
I did halfway gesture, but I gotta. Someone else ask a question.
Any other questions, comments?
Well, I'll start with the one question while I'm looking for this other thing. If you hire this inspector, is this going to solve the problem? Like, assuming the numbers go up a little bit for next year, is this going to solve the problem of waiting all this time for inspections?
I guess unless we can establish a threshold, like how long are people waiting?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I talk to contractors all the time and ask, you know, are we slower? Are we faster? No, you're about right where most municipalities are. You're faster than some, you're a little slower than others, but
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, through MyGov, once the permit is issued, when they're ready for an inspection, they just go in and schedule the inspections through, on their calendar of when they want it. So if they're like, hey, I'm gonna be done with this, can I schedule it next week? And we're like, well, you can just schedule it on the counter. So the scheduling the inspections and doing the inspections doesn't take time, because yes, if you were to call towards the end of the day before, then pretty much the next day is probably already booked, but then you would just go to the next day, the most recent time. The permitting side is what takes longer. And that is not all on our end as well. You know, someone submits a permit, it is reviewed in 7 to 10 days. They could take 3-4 weeks to get the responses in. And then sometimes those responses don't even address all of the questions from the first response. So then they take another 2-3 weeks to address those questions. So that's the real delay, is getting those permits reviewed and their time frame to get the responses in. We've had recently several permits that are like, oh, well, here's my building permits, but on the drawing it specifically states design build only, so mechanical, plumbing, and electrical to be provided by the subcontractors. And then the subcontractor goes, hey, just add me to this permit, I'm ready for my inspection. And we're like, okay, you didn't get the permit. We need you to submit the engineered drawings for the mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So that takes a couple of weeks, you know, and they're like, what? No, you know, it's the you issued the building permit. Well, you issued the building permit on the overall idea, but the details of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing is to be provided by the subcontractors. So those are the issues that we are really seeing right now, so.
You know, we tried to have a meeting and invited all these contractors because we wanted to educate them on the stormwater master plan, best management. Dan, how many people showed up for that meeting?
Sounds like a ward meeting.
So when we try to educate because we see the challenge, just meet us halfway. They're not doing that at all. And it's easy to call an elected official to complain. And you're doing your job because you're advocating for them. But there's the other part of that they're not telling you. So I'm not sure what the solution is, because we continue to reach out to help them understand what the city's process is. Unless we set a performance measure to track that, we can't do it in MyGov. So, well, because I don't know if that feature exists. We can ask. But there needs to be a way, and I don't know what I'm talking about, quite frankly. But can we go out and say, okay, I'm here, let's click, 15 minutes later, I'm done. I mean, because that's what you want, to be able to tell someone how long it would take.
This is Steve's 34-page report, and as he explained, a lot of these show in review, 169 in review, and a lot of them were just waiting for the person to come pick them up, right?
To pay or to issue.
But Brentwood is done with everything that we need to do, right? I mean, to me, that means that this workflow tracking software is not helping track our workflows, because, whoever's responsible for that step should be indicating. I mean, obviously, MyGov should tell us those metrics. We should have targets. We should be able to say clearly to get rid of all this anecdotal, because you can find anecdotal for any opinion you want. And, if we can get that kind of data out to say, look, we are being more responsive.
And we can ask MyGov if there's a way to track, like when you show up at the location till you're done,
Well,
the
not
ability.
that so much. I don't think it's that. I think it's more, right? I mean, you just look through here. It's 17 days, 49 days, 102 days, 292 days. I mean, like, how long is this actually?
From inception to completion.
Yeah. How long is each step taken? How long is? is this 292 days actually, you know, waiting on us? I don't think so. It's a
Yeah.
Villas at Brentwood, so it's probably an occupancy permit that is just waiting for them to come pick up, or they,
Sometimes they don't even submit their licenses.
that's right.
You know, ID.
So they just didn't call it, so it was left open.
right.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of all of that.
Which means we're not getting visibility through MyGov of what's going on.
Yeah.
You can look at. That property doesn't see where it is. MyGov does not.
Those were reports that they generate. If you go to the specific address and click on the overview, it'll tell you date, time, and person every time that save button is hit. So, I mean, you can track how it went through Yeah, Jeff.
So is MyGov the right system? I mean, what I hear from anecdotally, from people that I've talked to is that they can't even really figure out, it's not intuitive, they can't really figure out how to even get in there and enter it. And ultimately, it generally the common theme is that it comes down to once they have their first one, they get a phone number of the inspector, and then they just call from there and bypass MyGov because it's not intuitive, doesn't seem to be working. So I guess the question is MyGov the right, you know, maybe it's not a personnel issue, but more of a systems issue that seems to be in our way. Or both.
That's a good question.
Or
You know,
both.
we went the route of MyGov because we felt that embracing technology would make us efficient. And then it took several years to bring it online. And, you know, the challenge with technology is you either have people that are very intuitive and understand it, or you have people who are having to learn it. So from a staff point, it's no different from a public point. You know, you can either easily figure it out or you can't. And that's part of the challenge. We know other cities have used MyGov. I think the latest I heard was that University City had it. And then, do they still have it, or have they parked it?
They have it.
They still have it?
They still have it, but I think they're moving to a new system, is what I heard. I would say.
Right. That's a problem. If we have to walk people through how to use the system, then it's an issue, and that takes more time off of.
But, you know, we have the same thing with business license. I mean, it's every technology.
No,
You're
I
dealing with
understand that.
people, they're, and I think we've brought some concerns. I think that one particular business owner in town thought somebody was entering her annual gross receipts and it wasn't. So there's always going to be challenges with technology. Does this mean we need to park the system and find another one? That might be an option, but we could also, it's the same group of people who do work in our city. So we could always schedule another meeting and try to train them, but are they going to show up?
A lot of the permit oh, I can do it quicker, so just give your name and I'll put it in for you. Having that person in place also helps.
Yeah, Nancy.
So I have a question on two questions. The first question is on the, if I'm reading this correctly, we issued 551 occupancy permits, but there were 1,078 residential inspections. So if I'm reading that right, we've 527 multiple inspections. So, that's a huge percentage of the 3,000, for 527 of the 3,000 inspections that have been done this year are re-inspections. That's a huge amount of time. And so I would certainly advocate something coming back from you all recommending that we increase the fees for re-inspections. Are you?
We did that.
Did we do that?
Yeah, we
Have they
It
done
was
that?
recommended,
Okay.
yes.
But, okay, well then I still think it's a good idea, sorry.
Okay.
Yes. Well, that's, okay. Okay, well, that's great. So then my other question is sort of back to what Jeff brought up earlier with the different levels of codes. So what do cities do? Like I was looking at something like DePere. So DePere's on the 2018 codes, but they outsource electrical, they outsource some of the things to the county. So how does that work? Because they outsource electrical to the county, but then they're on the 2018 codes. How does that fit together? And what's their ISO rating? And how does that, I mean, other municipalities have this split, and it seems that we keep being presented with, well, either we keep it all or we give it all away, and how does that even work?
Yeah,
'Cause
but I just-
other communities do it.
If I might point out, if it's staying within electrical, then I don't think it's an issue, because then it stays with residential or commercial. Am I saying that correctly?
They outsource commercial.
Right? Okay. Sorry to jump in there, but.
I mean, we can ask, because I don't know the answer to that. And I think if we look at that matrix from the county, I don't know whether it would tell us whether they're on 2015, 2018, what code they are. I think that's what Whitney's trying to look at. I don't know if it would give us that information, but we can find that.
It's on their website. I'm looking
It's-
at it right
okay.
now. I mean, their Energy Conservation Code, 2015.
Okay.
No, the county. So that's an amendment?
While they may adopt the 2015, they amended it to just have, to go back to whatever our value, that works, they would just
Well, and again, I hope nobody takes this personally. This is not saying that we are not able to do this because we don't have the skills or the willingness or the desire to do it well. I mean, I think our role is in strategic leadership is making sure the system is in place that can respond to future and is functioning correctly, right? And I still wonder if it is, honestly, and it could be the software. I mean, I've requested a sit down and let me pretend to be a contractor and try and use this software. Is the fact that it's always the same people that work in this town, is that because nobody else is willing to come in here because they don't want to learn this stuff? Is it, is that indicative of something that we need to think about?
That may be part of it. I found that contractors who have office staff have a lot fewer problems with MyGov than
Right, right.
those guys want nothing to do with it. And it is, honestly, I didn't find it to be user-friendly at all. And I was here for the first training.
Right. Right, right. I mean, Larry, our IT guy, he manages the U-City installation of MyGov and here. So is there a way we could talk to him about ways to improve it? Oh my gosh, we wore out the microphone. talking about
Actually,
this.
we have a dedicated IT specialist just for MyGov. So, is it Martin?
Martin.
So anytime we do training, Martin's there with us. Or if there are challenges, we call Martin. So we already have a dedicated IT staff who helps us. So we just need to continue to talk to Larry, and Larry will ensure that Martin comes in and helps us. I don't know that they, what was it that you just said, that they do U-City? Is that what you just said?
Yeah,
They do?
yeah.
Oh, okay. We can talk to them about that. I wasn't aware of that.
Did somebody have a question about inspections? There was,
About the I was asking about the
Okay.
re-inspections.
Oh,
okay.
I mean,
But yeah.
yeah.
People's inability to schedule.
Yeah.
That was one anecdotal that came across, that they couldn't schedule it online, and it was somebody quite competent with computers, so even though not MyGov.
Then they usually just call the city and say, hey, can you schedule this for me? And we've been, you know.
And we strive to not hold people up. I mean, if somebody really needs an inspection, I'll go do it. You know, if there's, I'm not on the inspection calendar, but we just don't hold people up for inspections. I mean, that's just, I would very much disagree with, if somebody told you that, I would disagree.
We've had people call, like, hey, so-and-so did my occupancy permit, he failed it, but we were able to fix it, can he come back out? And we call that inspector, and he's like, sure, I'll drop by. And so we've done a lot more of that, and I continue to push them to do that. But, first time failed occupancy is not unusual. Not at all. Just they don't have certain things. Window wouldn't work, that, light fixture didn't work, wasn't grounded. Some of it's due to the age of the home. Some of it's, they just schedule it too soon to, like, there's been a couple at an apartment complex. And I'm like, why would you schedule an occupancy permit when you have no running water? That's an automatic failure.
Yeah, Jeff.
I guess back to the kind of the big elephant in the room question, right? The senior multidisciplinary building inspector that we're looking to add to the staff. Let's just spitballing. If we decided at some point here to take commercial and outsource that to the county, are you still feeling like that individual, that hire is necessary for the city, even taking that away from, since commercials right now a relatively small percentage, is that something that you still feel that position's critical for the success of our department?
Yes, based on the numbers for this year, I would say yes. The thing with commercial, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing inspections, a lot of them are done at the same time. A lot of commercial work, we'll do framing, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing at the same time. It's just ready. So I don't know. I can't say how much time that would save, but it's not like we're going out there 4 times for most of these.
I feel like what makes this very confusing is, why we've had this debate for so long is we're conflating so many things.
Yep, agree.
I mean, there are so many issues that we're sort of talking about. Now we're talking about, and which is an issue that I think we've all expressed in the past, but we're now saying, okay, well, maybe is MyGov the issue, right? So I feel like we have to start to really break things down to make a clear decision of where are the real issues, at hand. And I guess that's where we're looking for you all to say, here are the issues and here are the things that I think.
The issue started with COVID because
Yeah.
we couldn't go to people's homes to do these inspections. Then we had vacancies, so that compounded it. So I'm not sure that I was hearing any of this type of discussion prior to 2020. So if that gives you a framework of, well, when did this really blow up? That's when we knew the challenges with MyGov, but we were dealing with it, and people were working through it. But then when the delay started, we couldn't go into your homes. Well, you have to send us pictures. Well, then the pictures weren't cutting it because we were missing things. So fortunately, and even before people came back to work, I think, Steve, you all were going back into people's homes.
Yeah.
And then we pulled that when, people started testing positive. So that's when the challenge really started for us. And, it was a discussion that the chair of Ways and Means said at the meeting, Alderwoman Sims, that the board could say to us, and the board has said this in the past, we are authorizing funding for this additional position, but we're directing you not to hire someone to fill that position until you get the green light from the board. We've done that on capital projects as well. So I think we know what the solution is. Can we agree to a time frame to achieve that solution? Certainly having another position will help us, I think, get our hands around being a little bit more responsive in a timely manner so that no one person is overwhelmed. But is the issue with the commercial? We don't think so. It's just getting up to speed and being able to be responsive in the manner that we want to and the contractors want us to for residential.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that the issue is with commercial. I think what the potential solution is, if we're feeling that that we're overextended as a department, where are places that make sense that we could cleave off and not really suffer too much of an issue, but allow for the staff that we do have to work on the things that, so it's not that commercial's the problem, right? It's does that make a nice sense, make a clean thing to take some things off their plate.
So
That's
what
all.
would that be if it's not commercial?
Right. I mean, where are the other areas that we could look at if we say for example, we have these two offers that come on, that's fantastic. There's going to be a little bit of a learning curve ramp up. We have now the decision in Ways and Means is whether or not we're agreeing to this additional body. And I think we need to have a clear understanding of the way forward in order to make that choice. And I know that that's what the Ways and Means Committee feels is what's our plan. And if these bodies that we're hiring and some additional support are going to be needed no matter what we do, if we take some level of workload off of the department, then I think that's the question that we really need to get to. I mean, we've already established that with the fire marshal. We know, regardless, we're going to need the fire marshal. That's an important, critical piece. That's not part of the debate anymore. I
Right,
think.
so I don't know what Steve found the learning curve to be before you felt you were truly immersed in city of Brentwood process. What was it for you? 6 months to a year, or
Yeah,
at least 6 months?
I had a little, I think I had it a little easier because I was the only new
That's
guy
true.
in there, and I got some specific training, like say, I spent the first week just in the office, taking payments, doing clerical stuff like that. And I mean, I didn't do an inspection probably for a month. But that I was comfortable with. The other stuff, procedure's a big deal. No two cities have all the same procedures as far as zoning and all the other questions that we get that people expect us to just spit an answer out. It's like,
It takes research.
they don't want you to, they don't
You
want to
think
hear,
you're
"I gotta
asking a
look in the
simple
book."
question? You got to read the code and, okay, let's think about it again. Okay, we're not certain, let's talk to Stephanie. Okay, let's bring in Kevin. They're not easy conclusions that you can arrive at. So what is the path forward? I think they've spoken enough. We need direction from you all.
Well, I mean, I think number one, data would be very good, right? We've requested, more information out of MyGov. If we need to meet with IT, I think that would help us, right? The 34-page report with a narrative from Steve, it doesn't tell us anything, right? Where are these? Are we being responsive? And we don't know. We don't know the question. We talked about, I believe in June or July, we should establish targets that our response time is going to be. Not how long you're out on the inspection, but like from when a request for an inspection comes in or a permit or something, how long is it taking us to get there? And we should have targets so we know if we're hitting those. So I think we've clearly articulated that's what we want to see. We can reiterate it today. And if we can't get it with MyGov, then look at something else. But I imagine you can get it with MyGov if we just talk to IT.
Our target for inspections is 24 hours, and we rarely go 48. So I don't think that people are waiting for inspections. There may be an issue with plan review in certain cases, but we're pretty responsive with inspections. And that's where the overview but you have to go to a specific address
Yeah.
to see that when those, and I mean, it tells you down to the second when it was scheduled, when it was the first inspection, things like that. You can get all that out of the overview.
Our target for plan review is 7 to 10 days, but Scott has gotten those up to 6 days turnaround. But that's for first contact or first, like initial first comments. So then it's totally dependent on the applicant of when they resubmit to address those comments and whether they fully address the comments. Like there was someone that said, oh, well, we applied for a permit, we resubmitted for comments, there was additional comments, we resubmitted to address those comments, why don't we have our permit yet? And I checked permit tracking, and said, yeah, they submitted it on November 2nd, and you're at the front counter at November 3rd, so we just haven't gotten to it yet.
And I think that's an area where data would help,
Yeah.
right? To be able to say, in the case of first comments were sent back, it's back in the customer's queue, right? So it's not sitting in, Brentwood review, and it's not here, right? I mean, there aren't 169 actually waiting for Brentwood to do something right now, which is August 2021. So I think that is one thing we really got to do, and I feel like we've given that direction before. I don't think we've answered the question of if another head will help.
Going back to the plan review, they do get an email when there's a step taken. If they don't check their email, I don't know if they're waiting for a phone call. That I don't know that we're going to get to the point where we're going to say, call them and tell them to check their email.
No.
But I mean, it goes to their account. If they have permits in there, I would think that somebody would look at it daily. And it could speed things up.
Sorry.
Please.
On the permits and everything, does the system just email it out one time and then that's it? Or if it remains active, is there a continual notification that gets sent out?
No. When the step is done and you click the save button, the email goes to them saying, you know, there's a step, I'm not sure how it's worded, but the email goes to the contact email that they provide when they register as a contractor. So, and I mean, everybody's told that. I go, this is, don't give the owner's name for an email if he's never going to look at it.
Right.
Send it to the secretary, and then at least she'll get it to where it's got to go. Because a lot of companies have different project managers who handle their project. They have no idea what
Other
the
projects.
rest of the company's doing. They can either, we can set them up with their own account, and then they'll get the email directly, or it can go to like a general office mailbox, and then someone in the office is in charge of distributing those. They can forward them to whoever is relevant. But it doesn't repeat.
I would also like to know if this is easy to use software. I would still like to, you know, let me pretend to be a contractor and open that up to everybody, anybody on the board, not just Public Works, and let's just see what the life, you know.
You can go in, first you register as a contractor, and then you start the process. So you don't need authorization from us to go in and pretend.
I will say I did it for a fence permit and I found it totally confusing. And I feel like I can use some complicated other software and I thought it was really hard. And I don't even know, I don't know how you came back and re-inspected on my fence because I don't think I asked for it. I don't know, somehow you were.
Somebody did.
Somebody did. I wasn't elected then, I don't think so. It was.
If any of you, I mean, I'm going to be in the office on Friday. If any of you want to come up, there's a laptop up there. I can walk you through the contractor registration and then permit.
I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I can't come Friday, but I'd be interested in seeing that. Yeah.
I've used it for, in Brentwood Forest for occupancy permits, and I've never had an issue with it. I mean, the guy shows up, and then get my certificate, when my tenant moves in. I don't.
A lot of people. This system integrates with the county tax records. That's how all of the ownership information and all this other is imported from that. So we're kind of stuck with what we get from them. Sometimes we'll have to edit ownership information because they're behind, which is understandable. But a lot of people struggle with finding their address, and it's not easy to. What I tell people is broaden it as far as you can go. Just put in the number, and you might get 10 hits, but yours is going to be one of them in there, and it gives you the list that you just got to select one of them. They have a tendency to put in too much information, and if there's a period out of place in there, it won't call it up. So. I think people who use it, people who do a lot of work here, they're not struggling with it near as much as the guys who come in and do one job, one or two jobs a year. I mean, it's November and we're still having contractors register. So I don't think it's going to be a slow winter.
Maybe we need to invite contractors to one of our meetings and get some feedback.
Great idea.
I mean, we've got plenty of builders. There's a bunch of them going to be showing up for ARB next week. You got a list. Say, hey, we want to make your life better too. Come on in and sit down here and tell us your woes and go from there.
And honestly, there's some of these contractors, and I don't know if there's anybody who's had a complaint or anything, but they're doing the same thing over and over, the same thing wrong over and over. And I keep telling them, you can't, there's one contractor in particular who only wants to load one page of the plans onto the permit application. And we'll call them and we'll say, we need all of them. And They go, well, it'll only take one page. I go, you convert the entire set into one PDF and it will take the whole thing. I can't do that. I go, I don't know what to tell you. Your architect surely has the equipment this is all done in AutoCAD anyway. There's one file with all of these pages in there. Have him send it to my email and I'll put it in there.
Most of them will send a PDF. Once they've paid for their architect, they'll get an email with a PDF in there that's got everything they need.
Yeah. No,
And they can just
should.
forward it on to you.
Believe it or not, we still have a few architects who can't, everything's still drawn.
I love that idea, Steve. I mean, we should do that. We have the list. Let's invite them in.
So if we're close to wrapping up, I'll say that I am comfortable with this position in the budget, but with the caveat that we still have questions, including better tracking in MyGov, asking contractors to come in, and then with the other issue, how do some of these communities that outsource some of their things to the county and are up on more recent codes, how does that work for them for all these reasons that we keep being told that can't happen? And how do they manage to navigate those combinations? Are there other questions that we?
I think that's a perfect
Is that a
review.
good-
Yep, sounds good. Anybody have an issue with that? Okay. All right. Thank you for everybody's time on this, again.
Is there direction
Yeah, we just did it.
for Ways and Means?
Oh, I said.
That's
that
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
but with the extra information.
All these caveats, okay,
Basically Sunny's idea. So she said it in one sentence and we took an hour. and a
perfect.
I think it was my idea. Everybody confused.
It was.
The women who sit down here.
It was yours.
Thank you.
I can tell you
half.
that.
All right.
My mic is on.
All right. Let's go on to item 7B, Cul-De-Sacs. All right. This is the best committee, honestly, it really is.
Another hour.
All right, so last year we talked about some of the issues we're having with the cul-de-sacs, and you guys asked us to maybe go back, review each cul-de-sac individually, maybe also take a look at maybe some recommendations for one large and one small. So we did that. The kind of under finance operations, we kind of looked at the ones that maybe didn't need a treatment, and to be honest, all those are ones with curbs. And so the curbs obviously handle the issue a little bit better. Ones that don't have a full curb are probably the ones we're looking at. And so we made the recommendation, trying to make this quick for you guys. For a small circle is to replace that area with rubberway, because it is usually a really small area, so that way we can kind of see how that application looks. And then for large circle, Dan and I came with two, and Alderman Wege actually helped us with another one, which makes a lot of sense. One is we replace the outer strip with 3 to 6 feet of rubberway, so as the cars are coming around, they're not taking out the grass as much. We could replace the damaged areas with grass pavers, and if you guys know about grass pavers, basically textile plastic that you can drive over, and hopefully it holds. I think it depends on how many times you drive over. It depends on the grass, and obviously. And then the last is doing a curb, maybe reducing the circles a little bit so you actually have more room on the street and doing a curb. That's obviously a lot of work and would actually have to involve more concrete or asphalt depending on what street there is. So recommendation is do a small circle treatment on Marblehead so we can kind of see the rubberway treatment first, and then come back, and our first recommendation would be Mary Kay. And, come back once we see kind of how Marblehead works, make a recommendation on which we think we should do for Mary Kay.
Over on Marblehead, I drove by today, and, I mean, it's a little cul-de-sac, but it looks like it's being sawed, concrete sawed for water lines.
Yes.
I guess water lines spiral for that whole cul-de-sac right underneath that area right there. So I just make you aware of that. And
Yeah, and I think I actually put that in the memo, that we know that Surrey American Water are doing projects both on Marblehead and Mary Kay this winter. So, that gives us a little bit of time to, we need a little bit of temperature for the rubberway. And then we could, in early spring, if we wanted to move forward with either a grass paver or something else, we could do that and make sure that Missouri American Water is done.
Have we used this rubberway anywhere where you actually drive on it instead of just walking?
We haven't.
One of those FedEx trucks, because those are the guys that are chewing up all that.
Right.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I was in support of the rubberway initially. I guess I'm concerned that you provide a pad and people are going to be using it instead of avoiding it. They're going to actually be using it more often, right? So I know that it's more complicated, maybe more expensive to do. And if curbs themselves, raised curbs are especially on these larger ones. The smaller ones, I get that there may be, we have to come up with a different solution, but I don't know, maybe installing curbs is the long-term solution to prevent people from actually driving on it. Because I'm just afraid if we start doing a 2 to 3 foot path around these, you're going to have people even potentially pulling up and parking on it, or, I feel like if you pave it, even if it's with rubberway, it's going to get used.
That's a good point.
The other concern I have, I guess, in the smaller ones is if you pave those with rubberway, I'd like to see how it looks, I guess. But you do lose some of the, when you look at some of the just the nice little plantings, that are the ability to plant them, or even have a small tree in the middle. Are the small ones, are you going to have a rubberway that can allow for at least a tree or something to be planted?
Yeah, I mean, we can do the Marblehead actually has a light, and so that would give us a
Right.
good sort of indication of how we could do, kind of work around a certain, whether it's planting or it's a tree or if it's another light or even a hydrant. It kind of gives us a view of how we could do that. But yeah, I think the idea of, I've seen some applications of the rubberway and sidewalks where it basically is around trees. It's basically, it gives a tree well basically as part of the sidewalk. So I think it can be done. I think ironically, Marblehead might be the only small circle we recommend doing some sort of treatment to. But that doesn't mean in the future, if some other smaller circles, something happens, that we couldn't go back with the rubberway material.
So I asked them to look into the grass pavers thing. I know some people use those for like second driveways, and you can't even tell they're there, and it's designed to be driven on. I don't know if Dan, you have a sense for how hard those are to install, or Eric?
It's very similar to any other applications. You need a rock base, sand, and then you make sure that they're flat, and then make sure you have a good base for seed to grow. I did read something, you can try putting sod over them. I've not heard that before, but that was in some of the research I did in the last day.
I mean, I would be in favor of, instead of just doing the small and wait and see how that is and trying the large, if the committee's amenable to trying that or something else on a larger, maybe we run 2 experiments at the same time. That way this, doesn't stretch on for decades. I'll tell you, Mary Kay Court is awful. It's much worse than what this picture is right now. Almost half the circle is gone, and I think part of it is people park their cars on the circle, and I don't know if we want to stop them from doing it because they have small driveways, but if you put a curb there, then you probably wouldn't be able to make it around the circle, period.
Yeah, I think the only way you can do a curb is if you reduce the size of the circle.
Yeah.
And so you're losing space. And we, no matter what we do, we'd have to run utility locates to make sure there's nothing underneath there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we could, as an experiment, we can try the grass pavers as well. We just want to make sure that's a direction the committee wants us to take.
You guys be okay trying that? Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the grass pavers at least solves a little bit of my issue in that it doesn't look like it's
Right.
a track for it to be driven on, right? I think,
And you
And it
still
might fail
run,
miserably. I mean, that's the whole point of this, right? It
yeah,
might-
and you can still run a mower over it too, so we can still mow.
right. I'd support that.
Sounds like a motion.
I'll
So
make,
try Rubberway on Marblehead and the grass pavers on Mary Kay?
Or is that where you would recommend?
That was my recommendation. Well, mine, Dan's, and Marty's, the park superintendent.
yeah, I think before we decide whether or not, more drastic measures of a curb are needed, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Any other questions, discussion? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great.
That was an hour. Got it done pretty quickly.
All right, stay up there, Eric.
I am.
8A. On force, on call. Tree.
So we're at the end of our 5 years with our contract with Davy Tree. And so we put out a RFP in October. It was out for 3 to 4 weeks. And we came back and I know I sent it to a number of people, actually know Chairman Burkemper of the Sustainability Commission sent it to a couple people. And with all that, we still got one response, which was Davy Tree. Staff is comfortable moving forward with Davy Tree. Davy Tree has been a good partner these last 5 years. I think if anything, they proved their worth during the storms this summer. I call them I get the call from PD. I drive in, I'm in city at 3 o'clock. Call Davy Tree, someone answers, and they're out there before people wake up, cleaning off the road. So to have that sort of flexibility is wonderful for my position and for my staff's position. In addition, I think another testament is the fact that when they propose it, the next 5 years, they do not increase the rates on removing prunal, emergency work, or tree planting. The only thing that does increase a little bit was stump removal. And so they used to have kind of a 0 to 7 inch. It was this amount, 7 or 8 to 14. And they want to go by a flat fee of $7 per stump inch. And if you look at it, we'd actually pay less for any tree that is 21 dBH or smaller, and then we'll pay a little bit more as the trees go up. If you get a 40-inch oak, yeah, we'll pay a little bit more, but ultimately staff feel it'll be offset by the savings in the other areas as well, or the other trees that need stump removal. So our recommendation is to move this forward to the board for consideration.
I think it's an excellent recommendation. What they did over in Brentwood Forest when that tree fell in the condo and they were able to get that crane that day in there to remove all that, the resources they have at their disposal is incredible.
It is.
Like a motion.
It's a motion.
Second.
All right. Any other questions, comments? And they will keep the Tree Keeper software available, right?
And yes, that is, I didn't mention that, but that is their system. So if we went with a different company, we'd give up Tree Keeper.
Bonus.
Didn't know about it until tonight.
That's it.
All right. All those in favor of taking it to the big board?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great.
Thank you.
All right, Brentwood Bounds GRG Trail Extension.
Okay. Got a couple of these that are fairly quick. We were tasked with looking into the trail extension. This would be just south of Florence, but north of the playground, if you're familiar with that area. So there's a couple pictures. I kind of gave you a little bit of history, so just to give you an idea of where we were and then where we are currently. But at one time, Van Mark Way was going to extend to the north and connect up with Mary, and that trail was actually going to go all the way up to Florence. And then that plan, of course, changed. Then Van Mark Way actually slashes across at a perpendicular to Rogers Parkway, just south of the playground. So the new plans, or the plans that we're actually using for construction, shows Van Mark Way just south of the playground, which I included in the memo. And the playground was originally supposed to be utilized in place. It's no longer utilized in place because of the MSD sewer project. So playground's going to go away, but the Brentwood bound plans had that GRG trail necking down from 12 feet down to whatever the existing path is. I'm assuming it's probably at least 6, just guessing. I don't measure it or didn't measure it. But if we were to basically go from the playground and run it up to the north, roughly 150 feet in length, it would be consistent. It'd be 12 feet all the way up there. And then there would also be new striping going across Florence that would be comparable to what you see in that graphic for Van Mark Way. So cost for design services, if we're to pursue it with TWM, is $2,800. If you want to explore that, we've got, the memo and everything prepared for the board meeting. And there is cost associated with the construction of that path. We asked MoDOT to look that up for us, and the numbers that I have, those are fairly high, but I think we can come down from there. So the additional path that they did a rough estimate on was 28 cubic yards of concrete, like 234 square yards of type 5 base, which would be your rock, and then sod, because they would sod on either side of that, and that's like 500 square yards of sod. And then they gave a rough estimate of what KCI would need to do with removal of the existing path and then some rough grade. So the all-in cost, they think, would be roughly $24,500 on top of the $2,800. But like one of the figures they gave of like $6,000 for removal of the trail, I think we can negotiate with them, and Public Works could do a saw cut and remove that trail. They could still do the grading. Sod, I don't know how important that is, because that by itself is $4,225. If you did seed and straw and just, matured the grass, baby it along, maybe that can save some money. So I think there's ways to shave down the $24,500 is what I'm getting at. But if you want to pursue it so that it's one consistent aesthetic, we can do that. And you wouldn't necessarily be committed to build it if, you don't want to pursue the construction, but at least to get to the design so that you can get a better estimate on the construction. It's $2,800. That's the first step.
Yeah, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that we do this. I think long-term, it's a necessary thing, so why not handle it now while we're doing everything else? And I like the idea of having, the other reason I think it's important is for safety and visual, maximizing safety and visual for people that are either doing the ingress or egress out of the new Van Markway connection, and to be able to see people on the path so they're not trying to negotiate a tight curve, an S-curve. So, I mean, I would make a motion that we move forward with the design phase and do everything we can to maximize our internal resources to lower the construction cost.
I know that Craig always, we've suggested this, maybe trying to bring in public works staff to kind of help. And I think we've heard from Craig that when you have a contractor out there, they just want to do the entire project, and it's cleaner, and we're going to like what we end up with. So when I look at this total amount, and then I look at the Brentwood bound budget and the means,
we can,
I think we can afford this.
okay. And then, yeah, I'd leave that to you guys.
Okay.
Obviously, you don't need to complicate things.
Right. We just need a motion.
That's
Yep,
it, right there.
That's the motion.
And seconded by Nancy? Yeah.
So I just want to confirm that this is a project that would be funded through Brentwood Bound and not our annual budget.
No, it would be part of Brentwood bound. I think we can afford it.
Perfect, yeah, okay, I just wanted to confirm that, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. All righty, we got
Okay, the next one.
storm sewers.
Another exciting one. This is in that same area, so if you look at your memo, the question we were asked was, the storm sewers that are proposed, are those going to be able to handle the flow that this project is going to generate? You're adding some more impervious. Of course, Van Markway is impervious. It's paved road. And then Dorothy, the paving's changed a little bit there. You've got the underpass. So in your package, you'll see that there's the areas of concern that was brought to us by Alderman Gould. We spoke with TWM. They didn't seem too concerned with the issues, only because they did the hydraulic analysis. They said that pipes that were 12-inch diameter are upsized to 24 inches in diameter. Pipes that were existing at 24-inch diameter along Manchester, those are upgraded to 48-inch. So they feel that the capacity is more than enough to handle 90% of the storms. They also looked at the positioning of these different inlets, so those are at the low elevations. If you were to put one in on Van Markway on the south side, it could be accomplished, but it wouldn't be at the low elevation, so it would be inefficient at dissipating water. MoDOT did give us a rough price if we were to add that. They said that if you were to assume a double curb inlet and connect that at Van Mark Way, along with some 24-inch pipe and some rock excavation, or rock backfill, that rough cost was $10,789, so say $11,000. So if you were to increase the cost to us to do work with MoDOT, then the question becomes, do you want to spend another $11,000 on a storm sewer when it may not even be needed?
Yeah, Jeff?
Can you help me understand, when they say the south side of Van Mark Way, is that in the yellow area that's indicated as an area of concern, right where the connector is going to be? Or is that more all the way down where the existing, where they have a 2-grate inlet? Help me understand what a 2-grate inlet with
Yeah, where
side
they were
intake is.
proposing it would have been on the south side of Van Mark Way, west of Dorothy. So the new paved Van Mark Way, as it cuts across, it would
connector.
be on that south side where you had your blue arrows.
Okay, so yeah, the area that they've referred to as the Van
Right.
Mark Way connector.
Yeah, because they could run a pipe across there, connect it, but they said because of the elevation and topography, you're putting in a structure that's not at its lowest elevation where it should be, so some of the water would go in, but not like along Dorothy, because those are at lower elevations. Your grade is changing and going downward towards Manchester Road.
And did TWM indicate, as the current grade where they're connecting, where does it start to fall? And is there still grading or surface that kind of directs the flow down to the existing Van Mark Way? Or does it just continue to fall from that upper lot all the way down to Dorothy?
The way I understood it, which, we won't see until they lay it out when they start staking it, but it was Van Mark Way is at a higher elevation, it's slightly sloped, and that slope is running from west to east, so it's sloping towards Dorothy, and then that water would then go from north to south down Dorothy. So that blue arrow should naturally curve and go downhill, if that makes sense. So they felt that it was not needed. If it's kind of like belt and suspenders, if you're really worried about it, it could be done. They just don't feel that it was necessary. And I guess if it does become a problem, at least we know looking forward, like how much it would be to put something in there. It might
Well,
be a
that
little
was
bit more
going to be my
because
next question, is
you're saw
what's
cutting into
what's
it.
and so do the inlet, is the inlet the only, emplacement of the inlet, is that the only option? Or is there another way to collect water from the upper lot so that it doesn't impact as it gets kind of lower? I'm thinking in my garage, or before it gets to my garage, I've got a French drain so that water goes into that and it's not going into my garage, coming off of my driveway, right? Obviously, it's a high volume of water, so you probably don't want something in the pavement.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Across
Right.
the full connector, are there a grate system that collects it, even though it's not at a low point?
Yeah, there isn't now. I know what you're saying. Like basically you'd have like a grate system cut across there so that
Right.
as the water's flowing on the pavement, it would drop into that grate and then be diverted somewhere else.
Right. I mean, I guess that's my question, is
Yeah.
whether or not some sort of collection device, not an inlet, obviously, that's, if water doesn't flow to the inlet, it's not going to be picked up, it's not going to be efficient. But if there's something that was across the Van Mark Way connector that every drop of water that flows from
Right.
the upper surface will hit, and unless it's a major flow, it'll go
Yeah, there's
over
a
it.
system like that now. I don't know if you're familiar with like high school near the tennis courts at Brentwood Forest. There's a grate system that cuts across high school.
Right.
Most people drive over it every day and don't pay attention to it until the grates broke maybe 2 or 3 years ago. We had to repair those.
Right. So that was, I guess, I was surprised that I didn't see something like that.
I can ask that question with TWM and see what would that be? Is it similar to the double curb inlet? Is it cheaper? It would be at a shallower elevation, but it would catch, like you're saying, any runoff that goes across there would go into the grate. I just don't know what that volume is.
Right.
If that would be beneficial.
I am a huge proponent of doing anything with stormwater, as we hear, but I have a hard time with this one because we have experts who've done hydraulic modeling saying we don't necessarily need this grate.
Right.
And so in this case, I sort of feel like we need to listen to our experts, and I'm less in favor of making this change.
Yeah, Steve?
Dan, in this drawing, so if I'm following the dark blue line, the first, right when it gets to the yellow blotch, some of the water's leaving there, coming down the driveway from the apartment
Right.
building? And then some does make it to Dorothy? Or is that just from that yellow blotch onward?
And to be clear, I drew those were my lines that I drew on there,
Oh, so
indicating
I
that
retract everything I just said.
indicating the possible water flows.
Right.
Okay.
Because we're seeing, right now, we see water flows coming off that upper lot and making the turn because of the way the grade is, and they hit if it hits a curb, it keeps going, right?
Right.
You take away the curb that it might hit, obviously, there's gonna be some water that goes both directions, so I just,
Right, that was the theoretical. And again, I said it may be a little bit different once they lay it out, because I think we're seeing just, a two-dimensional drawing.
Absolutely.
Versus when it's laid out. I think now you're gonna see the grade and everything, and it's gonna be different.
Well, this is probably out of the scope of this work, and it's probably for our next week or with Gonzalez to tell him about this, but Dorothy just becomes a river.
it does.
Right, and part of it was because of the undersized pipe. They said that was only a 12-inch diameter.
Well, it's the inlets. It's really the inlets along the roadway, because the ones because of the slope of the pavement, the ones on the east side don't even get used,
Correct.
but right there by Henrietta. And then the way they're constructed, they catch some of the water, but the rest of the water bypasses them. They don't really, it's like not like an open mouth catching the water. So some of it bypasses, and I think that's when we had that flood a year or two ago down on Manchester Road. The majority of it was that water coming down there. So I guess my point is, I guess on the scope of this work, there's not much that can be done about that. But, moving forward, that's something that might be brought to Gonzalez's attention as we do the stormwater.
And those new inlets will have a deeper sump, the elevation underneath the concrete to the top of the roadway, that throat that the water goes into. Because I think that's part of the problem. If you drive up and down there, it's pretty narrow as roads have been increased in thickness and stuff like that.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'd say that I trust, that we've raised the concern. If the experts feel that when we look at the actual grading and everything they've taken into the account, I think we're covered. And we know in the future, if there is an issue, what it might cost and what we might do with it.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
No objections, moving on. Shafford Woods.
Yes, this last one, additional surveying. So we were asked last month who actually owns that dead end of Eager Road. So if you drive down Eager Road, go past McCutcheon, which is, on the north side, that would be the Richmond Heights side. The last street in Richmond Heights is Chafford Woods, and then you hit that guardrail. You literally would if you stopped there. Public Works, takes a shared approach with Richmond Heights, so if that needs paint or the reflectorized dead end, warning diamonds, we put those up, do some of the clearing of overgrowth, and we don't really know who owns it. We think that half of it's theirs, Richmond Heights, and half is ours, but what if it never was? If you look at the 1926 drawing that I uploaded, that shows that Eager used to, when it was dedicated, went all the way around York Village and connected with, at that time, Lay Road, which is present-day McKnight. So it went around the east side of York, then along the north property line and paralleled present-day I-64 and present-day Northcote. So what we're trying to figure out is, does it belong to York Village? Does it belong to the city of Brentwood? Does it belong to Richmond Heights? or there's a property that's right there, you know, maybe they absorbed it over the years. But this would provide a clear definition of who owns it. This would be the title search, and the licensed surveyor would take a look at it and give us a report with recommendations, like who owns it and how to move forward. So that's pretty cheap, I think, for doing all that research. It's $1,875 for the professional surveyor to give us a clear-cut answer of what's going on with it. And we already have a contract with TWM. That's why this is an amendment. You know, we've looked at several things with them. And I would just need a motion, you know, if you want to proceed with that.
Yeah, Nancy.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to execute a change order with TWN to investigate the property at the end, dead end of Eager Road.
Second.
Great. Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Did we get a motion on the previous item?
No.
There was no,
No action.
There, no action?
no action.
Okay.
Isn't that the one that's on the board?
Not the
No action for
stormwater.
the additional path to straighten it?
No, that got a motion.
That got
You got a
was
motion on
approved.
that?
Yeah.
The
Okay.
additional storm sewers.
That,
and,
no,
Yeah,
okay, perfect.
additional storm sewers is no.
All right, any citizens? No way, they're hanging on at this point.
I need to begin with.
All right,
Carmen.
motion to adjourn, anyone?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
In favor, say aye.
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 Thanks, everybody. Have a good day off tomorrow.